Hey everybody, welcome back to Tavern Talks. I'm your wonderful barkeeper for the evening, and tonight we have once again another fantastic guest. Tonight we're going to talk about something that's a little bit out of the normal. Normally we talk about Dungeons and Dragons, we talk about world building, we talk about character creations. Tonight we're going to talk about board games because that sounds like fun. Anyway, my buddy Drew here is a has a personal project and a passion project that he's been working on for I don't know, probably a few years at this point, and it has come to
8 years.
fruition. 8 years, goodness gracious! Hold on, let me turn down my volume. Goodness gracious, 8 years! Wow. And this has come into a point where he's launched on GameFound, and we're trying to get it published. But what I want to do before that is to just find out the back end of all this. Where did this all start? How did it all happen? And what have you done to create this opportunity for such a amazing game?
I mean, it all started in the basement. It's a little bit of a long story, so I'll try and nutshell it for you. Um, Basically, I got into Super Dungeon when me and my ex girlfriend broke up forever and a day ago. Um, we were together 7.5 years. I was pretty devastated. A bunch of my friends from like the local game store were like, "Hey, man, we got this game. You want to come try it?" I was like, "Yeah, sure. Let me get out of the house. Let me go do something." Because I had moved back in with my parents. So they showed me Super Dungeon Explorer, which is its first edition, like bare bones, just came out. We start playing it, and I'm just like, oh, this game is great. This is so much fun. I was obsessed with the minis, the little cute chibis. And then I just started playing it more and more and more. And then they had an expansion called The Forgotten King that came out, which allowed the players to play against the game itself, which was really exciting. And once that happened, my addiction for the game really kicked in because now me, my friends, my dad, we could all just play the game against the game. And and then they came out with another Kickstarter for Super Dungeon Legends where you'd be able to level the heroes, which I was already kind of looking to do with the game and like campaign it. So like we'd have a reason to get together every Thursday and play the game. And it just the Kickstarter funded, they released like an early preview of what the rules were going to be, and I was super disappointed because they're basically making D&D 4E but with Super Dungeon. So it was a little, it really disappointed me because for those who have not seen the game, their heroes are so iconic, like where each hero is like the Royal Paladin is the Royal Paladin, like the mini that goes with it is so iconic to the card, the powers he has are so iconic to the model that they're making it basically they were just generic placeholders and you build your own character. And I was like, no, I want to level this specific dude and build him up and keep his powers and keep him growing. And and ultimately what wound up happening was I said, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to keep developing my rule system for it, keep playing it because my friends, my dad, they all seem to love it. So screw it, I'm just going to keep going. And without going too deep into it, because it really does bring up a lot of bad blood for members of the community, is that Kickstarter that funded for $1.5 million never got delivered, and it really pissed off the entire community. Um, and that was pretty much the end of Super Dungeon at the time. So I said, "Now I'm just gonna keep playing. I have this massive collection. I have so many minis for it. I have so many boards. I'm just gonna keep doing it." And then my dad wound up developing prostate cancer, and one of the things that got him through the tough time was just meeting up together, playing the game. Really took his mind off everything, made him laugh, made him smile. He loved it, so he kept doing it. And then my dad is now cancer free. He kicked its ass, and I said, "How do I thank my group of friends for just constantly coming out, constantly playing? Like, how do I do that?" So I said, "You know what? I'm going to immortalize them and put them in our game." It was never the intent to like release the models to the public. It was never the intent to sell them. It was, I'm going to get minis of our guys made up. I'm going to make rule cards for them, and that's it. Like they can play themselves in the way that they like to play their characters. And like, for instance, Adam and Pat, who are Tunes and Obor. Adam always loved being like a mage. Pat always liked being a hunter. So that was easy. I always liked being the tank, so I made a tank of myself, and I just started throwing everybody in the game, posted the minis on Instagram, and the creators of the game were like, "Hey, dude, cool looking stuff. What are you doing?" And I was like, "No, no, 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 no. I haven't sold any of this. There's no way I'm in trouble. Like, I'm not violating anything." So they said we should have a chat. So I said, okay. So I met with them and talked with them, and they're like, "So what's going on?" I told them what I just basically told you guys in a much longer version about my dad and everything and how we're playing the game. And and after a long discussion, like, "What do you want to do with this?" I'm like, "I would love to be able to sell it, and keep the game alive." And they were like, "Rock and roll. We'd be interested in talking about that." I said, "Well, it's got to be an OGL style agreement where you get no money, you invest no money. I am bound to whatever rules you have to apply to me, and I get to do it all on my own. I fund it. You guys just stay clear of it because you have a bad name out there right now." And they're like, "You know what? Word." We respect that. I was like, "All right, cool." And then they gave me the OGL, which was really cool. And we went to um, in April. Actually, we launched it on Kickstarter. Um, that was a shit show. Um, 2 days before we went live, the company that was producing it in Division, they filed for bankruptcy. So the company that didn't deliver the Kickstarter filed for bankruptcy, and that dredged up a whole lot of old hatreds, and that didn't go well. And I canceled that Kickstarter towards the end because it was getting no movement. It was just bad blood and everything through the whole thing. And to be honest, I wasn't happy with the way the graphics came out on the Kickstarter. Nothing seemed to be going right. So I was like, let me just reconvene and redo this. And for the next like 6 months, I put it through the grinder. I developed a few more heroes. I did all the graphics myself this time because I knew I'd be able to capture the aesthetic of the game better than anyone else. And I put it up on GameFounder, and that's where we're at now. And we're tanking along. It's not funded yet like I would have hoped, but it is. It's already doing better than the last one, and we're still going. We still got like 20 days left. I'm hoping that we can really get people involved in it, and they can get their old collections back together and playing again, or they can get the game new and play new. Either way. So that's how all that came into light, so to speak.
Wow, talk about a story of passion and purpose. For me, when you told me the story of your dad and the fact that this was more of a tribute to him and his fight toward of cancer, it really got me. It really got me thinking of, a lot of the times we see these passion projects, these game founds, these Kickstarters, and they're ran by large companies. And
Yeah.
Drew and I have talked about this many times. You know, the reason why the goal is so high is because this is a single person project. This isn't, they can't take the opportunity to take the hit for 6, 9, 12 months because they have an inventory. This is one person pushing forth their time, talents, and heart to fund something and immortalize a time in their lives where things were struggles, which to me became my goal. And for people who don't know me, I have no scuff in this. I don't make anything from this, but I don't make anything from any of our shows, other than what is contributed to us as gifts and from our friends. And our goal once again is to push another project forward. If you're into board games, if you're into tabletop games, if you love miniatures, like, this is definitely something that is up your alley and um, an iconic opportunity to push the small guy forward. you know, I will say, after meeting Drew in Mysticon, he's not a small
Yeah.
dude. However, one man projects are a thing, and they're very difficult. And it's only through communities that we're able to fund things like this. So please, if you have that income, take that opportunity to take care of this kind of thing.
Well,
But
I appreciate that.
I want to come. break this down a little bit because I can say the heartfelt portions of this. I can go into the backstory of this. But like, what are they getting from this? Because that seems to be what we've talked about before, the contention point for some people and things like that. I mean, we're not getting one or two minis. We're getting like a dozen minis, it seems, and multiple kits, multiple board sets, and things that you can pretty much run a game for years and years if you really just adjust things here and there.
So the big thing about it is if you've never played the game before, you can get the new adventure and get into it. It gives you plenty of enemies, 5 double-sided tiles, so it gives you 10 tiles that you can mix and match and use. If you do the all-in pledge, you get 20 miniatures, one of which I actually have sitting right here is a massive dragon, which you got to see in person. It's really big. It's actually 6 inches tall by 6 inches wide by 6 inches deep.
Yo,
It takes up a 4 square by 4 square um volume
like
on the
cup.
board.
Like it's like my cup. It's
Yeah,
insane
it's
in
big.
size.
It's real big. And like even like the bosses, like who are smaller than that, like that's still a 2 by 2 mini, considered 50 millimeter or whatever. It's still a large, mini for the bosses and stuff. So you get 20 miniatures if you do the all in.
Can we take a
And
moment though and talk about the miniatures real quick?
sure.
So one thing that I know we had the opportunity to do with me going out to Mysticon. Drew lives on the East Coast. Same with me. He transported all these miniatures to the West Coast, and one broke, and it was because it was the sword that was connecting to his hand.
And it was the Funko Pop. It wasn't even the actual mini. It was
It
the one that I
wasn't
printed
actually the actual
oversized.
mini.
Yeah. So
What that means is that the quality of resin that's being used is high level. It's not cheap. It's not small details. It's highly detailed, heavy resin that doesn't break, doesn't crack, things like that, which is where that value comes in place. And people who like miniatures, that means a lot because I can go grab a random mini and try to transport it across, the wonders of the airport, and pray to the dice gods that it makes it there whole. But even
well,
something as simple as like a buddy of mine made me this for his campaign that we were running, and kind of kit bashed a couple pieces to it. But then there's thin pieces like this one and that one. If I transport this across the airport, I might need glue by the end of it. And
just so you know,
yeah,
besides all the miniatures making it there in one piece, sans the one Funko Pop giant guy that I said this sword's going to come off.
yeah.
Um, on the way back, the sword didn't even fall off. Everything came back in one piece, every single
Wow.
piece,
Yeah,
and
high
that was
quality.
throwing it up in an overhead and everything.
Mm-hmm. So
So,
that's what I'm saying. Like, if we're looking at cost to quality, the quality is above and beyond what people think it might be. Just
so
seeing
here's
them, feeling them, they're dense. They're not for people who have created 3D minis or have seen how 3D miniatures are created. There's not a lot of those simple air pockets within the miniature that could crack and break. It's all dense miniature. It's all dense resin, and it really does have a quality that is what I would consider a high caliber quality.
so since we're on that, I'm actually going to abuse you right now.
Go for it.
So you got to actually handle and see these miniatures in person in California.
Absolutely.
One of the comments I got, one of the messages that really kind of made me flabbergasted today and really it got under my skin a little bit was someone messaged me and said, these don't have a fine polished look to them. Like the old Super Dungeon games had and stuff like that. And the old Super Dungeon miniatures were actually injection mold PVC plastic, which is notorious for mold lines.
Mm-hmm.
It's notorious for you getting like if a guy has a spear, 9 times out of 10 that spear is coming bent at
Yep.
90 degrees, and you're gonna have to like use hot water to bend it back.
Absolutely.
So you got to handle these. Would you consider these finely polished, high detailed models, or like where would you rank these models? And
I
be honest.
Oh yeah, be like I've never seen original Super Dungeon models. So partially what I'm doing is uh, I'm looking it up right now because I really am curious to see the difference.
Look up the Forgotten King, Super Dungeon Forgotten King, because I think those were still really good models. But like the Frog Knights on that were the perfect example of the injection mold PVC, where they had these little lances where just the tips of them wound up curling up just from transport.
So I'm pulling up the Forgotten Kings models right now. I've got 5 models. I will tell you, not knowing the density of these models and the weight, because I will tell you the difference that I noticed immediately is picking up these models. They're not light, which means they have full density within the resin model themselves.
Yes.
Um, these look like miniatures from the hero miniatures for the Forgotten Kings, so those might be a little bit different. But you're looking at the green model miniatures right now
Yep.
that I'm looking at, and without picking them up, my opinion is if they're as light as a normal miniature that I use for D&D, which is smaller, I'm guessing there's going to be cracks in it. There's going to be pockets within the actual resin itself. They're just not going to have that density that you need when transporting it. And
Yeah, so there's definitely no air bubbles or cracks, at least from the ones I've gotten, because it's the
right,
injection mold PVC. But I have gotten plenty mold lines uh, on them on because I own literally everything from Super Dungeon, everything that's ever been released, and some of it is absolutely beautiful, gorgeous. Can't complain about it. Some of it I had my dad got into Super Dungeon because of me, and like obviously everything with him. He got a few minis where he wound up contacting the company and being like, "Yo, you got to send me replacement minis. Like this is ridiculous. Like I can't even fix this with my years of hobby experience." It was just soft plastic they used to things so things didn't break instead. There you go. Camera I chimed in with that.
yeah, like I said, I mean, I'm looking at just their, I don't know what these are. They're like pumpkins and scarecrows.
Those are resin. Um,
Okay.
those were notorious for issues. And as a matter of fact, they called it what was it? I think it was called it wasn't fine cast. The masterclass is what they called it. That was a different kind of resin that some of them came out real nice, but man, they were fragile as anything.
Well, I'm telling you right now, like even in the picture, I'm seeing the fork that the one or that the two scarecrows are looking at or that are holding, and you can immediately see from where the hand is to the actual thing, it's bending immediately.
Yeah.
That to me automatically is going to deter from that quality, and you also can imagine how fast that's going to bend some other direction, and that to me is just, I didn't see that when I saw them at Mysticon.
No, none of these are bent or warped. They won't bend or warp. Um, could they break? Anything resin has the potential to break, so I can't say that
Absolutely.
they're indestructible. But these are tough SOBs, man. Like I've dropped them from my hobbying desk to the floor, watched them bounce 6 times and pick them up, and not a single dent, scratch, nick, or anything on them.
Yeah, I don't know, being able to actually sit there and touch them and see how they're designed and feel the density of them, don't but sadly I can't give a full
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
comparison because I've never
Well,
felt
not I'm
a
not even talking about a
normal
comparison. I just wanted to for
super
you
dungeon
to
model.
basically because I've gotten comments like that where they're like, "Oh, these don't look polished." Like you got to hold them and see them. So
Yeah,
I
they're
mean,
definitely
you're
polished. But then I also have to come back and I'm going to fight the people that are saying this because of the fact that we now, as the Misfits, have started a Gunpla model making show. I've paid for Gunpla. Like, I have master grade Gundams around here that cost $200-300, and yet I'm still having to pull out files. I'm still having to pull out sanders. So if I'm
Yeah, you don't
paying
have
for
to do
that
that with
kind
these.
of cost at that level and I'm still getting those imperfections, I can't imagine something that is under that cost for minis to not potentially have those imperfections.
But that's the thing. These don't even have those because I'm a psychopath. And when I take them out of the resin printer, I clean them before I put them in the alcohol wash. So after they wash, I take them out to any final bit of cleanup. So when they cure clean and flat and good
Yeah,
to go.
exactly. We don't get that opportunity in things like Gunpla because they're immediately building it, putting it in a box, sending it out. So you don't know what you're going to get.
And
Um,
that's another big thing about these. They're with the exception of the dragon and the elf riding the tiger, they're all one piece solid
mm,
formation. So when they come out as one solid connected piece. You're not gluing 50 parts. You're not
yep,
trying to cut it off of sprues. It's
yep.
makes me excited. Like even here, we'll take like the troll queen for instance. She is one solid brick of troll muscle mommy. And that's how she comes. She doesn't come where you got to glue her arms separate or anything separate. She's one solid piece and it's great.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing is everything is one solid piece. And you can see it and you can feel it when you pick up the model.
And then they were saying they were saying my art wasn't polished and clean and I was like I'm like, I'm like that I take a little bit of offense to because I think people don't realize that because it's an independent project, so to speak, and it's an OGL and I can't like if I want them to not get any money from this and not be involved in it, the art has to be
Different.
just a little bit mine enough to make it not what they already released. So it has my take on it. So if you don't like the style, like that's cool. Like I respect that. Like you want the Super Dungeon style, it's going to be close. It's not going to be the same.
Right.
But to say it's like not clean and polished art, like I mean, first of all, it's insulting as anything to my artist who I love. If you get to see this, but like I just snapped this together quick for the box from the artwork, and I don't. And again, it's not even biased talking. Like I've received boxes with sketchier artwork than that, like badly printed. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Like that it's not like polished art. I understand if you don't like the style because it's a little different. Like I totally get that. And I don't
Style changes is one thing, but to say that it's unpolished, I would, and we can't, sadly, you can't go back to him and be like, hey, what are you seeing that's unpolished? Because my biggest thing comes down to, once again, I need examples. I need something that I can tangibly see so that I can fix the problem if there is a problem.
right, exactly.
And sadly, we just don't get that opportunity for Kickstarters and things like that. Like, you just get all these people that want to bash and crush and destroy, but they don't want to give any constructive criticism. I mean, I hate to be that person, but like, I'm a dad of 4 boys, and the worst thing my kids can do to me is come up to me and go, Dad, I have an issue, and you don't have a plan for that issue. Like, no, no. Like, especially my older boys. Like, they've known from like 9 and above, don't go to dad with a complaint unless you have a plan to solve the complaint, because I don't like complaining. It is the years and years of military training that I have been through and dealing with, where if you don't like something, that's one thing. But if you're
Right.
going to criticize it to the point where saying that it is imperfect or imperfected, how can I fix that? Because that's going to be my personally, that's going to be my biggest problem.
Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, I've gotten a couple of complaints about the art, but it's always like they're like the art's no good, blah 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 blah. And when I say why, it's always that same answer. Well, it doesn't look exactly like Super Dungeons artwork. It's a little different. And I'm like, yeah, no shit.
Yeah, it's my artwork.
And then I have to explain to them like it has to be slightly different. Like I call it chibi adjacent. Chibi is There's so many different versions of chibi. This is my take on it. And I was fortunate enough that when I got the models sculpted, I was able to get two of the artists who actually worked on Super Dungeon, who helped mold their miniatures. So I was able to get the aesthetic like really, really close too. But again, it has to be slightly different because it's an independent expansion. But I'm sorry, it's still so close that I can't understand why people are like, no, this is just straight trash.
See, and that's where I'm like now I'm on this wild goose chase of like confusion because I'm pulling up the Plague Throne and I'm pulling up actual Super Dungeon. I'm like, okay, what are you seeing that is that much different? Like, I get it. The eyes might be a little like it might be the very
Oh, the eyes for sure.
anime style. Eyes are a little bigger than other chibi formats, but in all
But
honesty, other than maybe that, the artwork looks very similar and the monsters look very similar.
yeah, you know what too? Cameron just said it the best. Super Dungeon art doesn't look like Super Dungeon art. I'm telling you, man, I have every single hero, every single monster from that game. I own everything. And if you flip through my binder of all the hero cards, from page to page, the art is so drastically different that for people to be like, yeah, it doesn't capture the same aesthetic. It didn't capture its own aesthetic as the years went on. Like it evolved. It's what it does. People like to example big head or deformed head with it. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think mine while still has like the bigger head on the like I still have the cheaper proportions on my art,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not as overstated as Super Dungeon. I'll 100% agree with that. Like there's no doubt in that the heads on their chibis are just massive. And listen, it works. It's adorable. I love it. But for mine, I like that it's a little more balanced, you
See,
know.
and I think that's funny because I think the version I'm looking at and the version you're looking at are very similar. And I'm looking at Super Dungeon Explorer, which I
Yeah.
don't know if it might be different,
Super
but
Dungeon Explorer is 1.0 essentially.
so you've got a character who looks like a barbarian with this big old axe and this red hair.
Claw Tribe Barbarian, yeah.
Okay, their head is no bigger than Ober's head to his body,
Yeah. I mean, listen.
and your eyes are the same size. Like,
There you go. Cameron again with a great example. It's not Marvel United or Arcadia Quest where it's those proportions are wild. I can't even fathom those. I specifically don't like those models because of how those proportions are.
I don't even know what I don't even like I said, I'm diving into a world differently because I've never played Super Dungeon. I've seen the minis from you, and I've been talking, and we've been talking about this for months now of like what you've been working on and all that stuff, but I don't see an extreme change from Super Dungeon. I can see enough of a change of the characters looking different, but the art style is very similar. Like I don't see it. But I
Yeah.
don't have an artistic eyesight apparently either. So there's
Well, I mean, for me too, I mean, I want to double back to something you're talking about in terms of value and price and stuff, because that is actually a big so the first Kickstarter I did, I priced it very conservatively, and there was a lot of I don't know if you would call it like wasted money on it. Like I was adding like tons of tiles that people are like, we don't need all these and stuff. And as time went on with that first Kickstarter launch, people were like, hey man, you don't need this, you don't need that, you don't need this. Um, I took a lot of that feedback into consideration. And when I wound up getting up ready for GameFound, I was able to negotiate lower quantity minimum to lower the price. I was able to negotiate um, things out, while still retaining quality, like the 2 millimeter gray board. And I got the price down on each pledge like significantly to where the all-in pledge is $50 cheaper. and people are still complaining about it. And the thing that blows my mind about it is, like you were saying before, when larger companies come into the GameFounder Kickstarter space, they have that reserved capital of, we have existing game lines that are going, or we have this existing game line that's going. We have that revenue in lockdown. We have everybody paid that we need to get paid. And, we're going to make this game anyway because we know, like, we'll market it, we know we'll sell it. That they can make the price point for the buy-in low. They can make the fund goal low. So this way, they can put that stamp on it, fund it within 24 hours. And then people go, ooh, let me get in on that. It's obviously popular. And they can put 50 minis in a box, for $100 for that pledge, because they know down the line they're gonna be able to sell, because they're gonna order in massive quantities, and they're gonna be able to just sell to conventions and other things. That people expect that from everybody, including small independent creators. Where, again, one of the things I discussed with a couple of people from the community is the dragon that I'm releasing is 4x4 squares in terms of base size. Again, it's 6 inches tall, 6 inches wide, 6 inches deep. It's a big dragon, high detail, high quality. They release, or Super Dungeon released, a dragon right before they kind of shut the doors that was smaller than this, less detailed than this, 3x3 base size instead of 4x4. $129 or something like that for the dragon. Just the dragon. I mean, it came with the cards and everything that are associated with the mini, obviously, but $129 for that dragon. And then when I explained to people, for all in, or even if you do like the returning adventurer and just the Plague Throne raid box just for that mini, you're getting something that should be valued higher than that. But let's just say we keep it the same. That's $130 out of $200, or $130 out of $148. Either way, that's before you add in any of the other minis. That's before you add in any of the hardcover book that's made D&D style. That's before you add in any of the cards, the tokens, the updated decks that you need to play the game, the updated decks. Because another thing people seem to forget is, because they never delivered that Kickstarter, all the assets like the Mighty Monster charts and things like that were never actually printed. So there's no physical copies of them anywhere. When you get this game, you get all those assets physically printed now. Like, you're good to go. But people just, they have multiple people said you should charge $50 for this and make it all digital. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. Especially because it's literally, I think I'm currently estimated at, we're overestimated, but we're estimated at about 3,000 cards for
I think
updating.
if you're gonna do digital, that means you're getting no STL files. You're getting, you know,
Well, no, they want the STL files, and I'm sorry, I'm not giving those out, because once they're out there, they're out there.
yeah, no. That is astronomical, and for people who have put their time, energy, and their money towards STL files, to get a customized, crafted STL file is expensive for anybody who's never done it. I've even looked into it for special characters for streams and for things like that. No, not doing it. It's expensive. Hero Forge, go build it in Hero Forge and see how expensive it is to do a full blown STL file. Yeah, it
Hold
might be
on,
$7.
hold on. Hero Forge has a little caveat. I don't know if you're
Yep.
aware of, or are you the one who told me about that?
Uh, are we talking about the one where Hero Forge owns your stuff?
They own everything that you make on there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
We talked about that at MystiCon. Hero Forge and D&D Beyond both own everything you do. That's the caveat, and allows them to charge the cheap cost they do, because then they can, if they find any sort of opportunity to market your stuff, they can do so without your consent.
yep.
And you're
But
not going to find the style you're looking for if you're doing something. You're taking their style. So for something that's very chibi based like this, it'd be very difficult then to go build that in something like Hero Forge, because you have to do customized head sizes and adjusting numbers and all these extra things. It's going to take you hours and hours to do.
and then it's like $17 for the STL file. I'm
Exactly.
charging $10 a hero,
No.
except for the bigger ones. The bigger ones cost a little more because they are like, so perfect example. This is a normal size hero. This is a large based hero. So there's an obvious size difference.
Right.
So
Like,
that one's a little more expensive, but for the most part, they're all $10.
but like you said,
Um,
you're getting over a dozen heroes or over a dozen miniatures plus more stuff for under 2,000 for just at $200.
at 199 plus tax and shipping, and
Yeah.
that's another thing is like with shipping, I'm not charging you made up numbers for shipping. Like I'm charging what they're charging me because that was an eye-opening experience when I spoke to one of the leading distribution companies in gaming. I won't say their name because I don't want to smear them,
Nope.
but they said to me, they're like, yeah, it'll be X amount to ship it here, X amount to ship it there, X amount to ship it there. But then, you have your profit that you want to build in on top of that. So, whatever you want to charge above that. And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, yeah. They're like, this company does it. This company does it. They're like, it doesn't cost $125 to ship, these Kickstarters like they're charging. Like they make $75 on the shipping.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah.
So,
You know,
to focus on I want to focus on something positive for a
yeah,
second.
definitely.
Um, so one of the things that, in terms of we're talking quality and cost and everything, this game is designed to give you years of use. So if you have an existing Super Dungeon collection, you can use it. If you own nothing and you get this brand new as a brand new player, and you wind up really, really enjoying it, it's designed that anything you go on eBay, anything you go on whatever gaming site that you can, or Miniature Market always has a sale on like the leftover stock of this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
where you can get a hero for like $3. They the game is designed that anything you buy that was previously released for Super Dungeon, with really the exception of 1.0 dungeon tiles because they were just different. You can use them, but you're gonna have to do a little bit of creativity on your own. But regardless, it's all compatible.
Right.
Every single thing is compatible. So if you like this, you can just start picking stuff up from the other editions and add it to your collection. If you have a collection, it just builds upon it. And because it's designed like that, one of the things that I didn't want to cheap out on was the book. It's
Mm-hmm.
hardcover D&D style book. Quality pages, quality paper, quality cover. And so this way you can open it up and use it, and you can use it for years without it falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to do a little stapled book that, oh, I'm using it. Oh, there goes the middle page. It's gone. Like I've designed it so the game has life to it. And I
Yeah.
think that's something really important that I also don't think people really understand how expensive paper is. Like that 2 millimeter gray board tile that they released with the game, I've matched that with my boards and everything and my
Mm-hmm.
and my tokens. That stuff is not cheap, especially post COVID. Like post COVID, paper printing is insane. It actually costs more than the miniatures.
Yeah.
And
And they're
one of the things
like
about
he said, Camaray says the same thing. Is that they're quality books like D&D modules. For people that don't understand what we're talking about, so just kind of break it down. I'm just grabbing a book that I have laying right here. So this book right here is a random encounters book, probably 200 pages. You know, for people who are selling it in Target, it's $25.
yeah.
But it has that strength to it. The fact that you're adding that to your puzzle or to your to that pledge level, and you're not offering just the PDF pledge level, you know, that right there is 25 $30 out of your cost. You take that, and then let's get really, I mean, if we want to granularly state how much there's going to be a profit for people who don't realize how much there is that goes into this kind of thing.
Oh, none. Almost
bet-
none.
Between the book cover, between the miniatures, we might already be almost at the full cost. And we haven't even done the boards, we haven't done the cards, we haven't done anything.
So production costs, the way I've set this one up is I do I do plan on making a little bit of money because I've put in so much time, but I've also left enough of a pillow that if something comes up, that something I didn't foresee, even though I have researched the heck out of this thing, including like a representative for importing the stuff that you have to pay that no one tells you about, to cover tariffs and import fees that no one tells you about. Um, there's enough of a pad there that if God forbid something comes up, I don't have to put my family's house at risk. I don't have to worry about if my kids are going to eat or if I'm going to have to take out of like the family life savings. Like I've priced it accordingly.
Yeah.
But on the same token, I don't plan on making much, if any, profit on this because I figure if this does well enough, people can see that I can deliver.
Mm-hmm.
I'll worry about profit on WOSDEC 2.0 if I can get that.
Right.
Because this has
Build the
been and always started out
traction, build
as,
the growth.
but it's always been a passion project and a love letter for the community. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
never been, man, I'm going to make so much money on these guys. You know, it's
Yeah.
always been about getting people's collections back in rotation and just really like thanking the game for helping my dad get through that hard time and everything.
Absolutely. And I
And that's
think
what it's always been about.
that is something that you can't put a price on. One thing I did want to talk about though is like he's mentioning things that are realistic expectations. Tariffs, changing costs of travel. I'm not going to mention any names, but 2 years ago, I bought an entire mini kit that was only supposed to cost me $60 for over 200 miniatures.
Huh.
And because QLM shifted their costs to travel overseas, if I wanted my miniatures, I had to pay an addition $120 towards the Kickstarter to afford that because they didn't already plan that opportunity, that potential into
So
the
now the
marketplace.
shipping is twice the cost of the pledge. And that's what people like I'm trying to explain to them like I've done my research. I have a European UK distributor who's going to do everything overseas. I have a US based distributor who works with them who's going to do everything in the US. It's done so all VAT is done to the pledge manager. It's not they're going to do VAT the pledge manager and then when it gets there you can charge VAT and import fees again. Like it's all handled properly.
Right.
And people I don't listen. The chibi community is very burned and scorned and Chris talking about the curse.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of Kickstarters that are having fun. I understand people's skepticism and feeling that they should get something for cheaper. I get it. But unfortunately, that just can't happen from an independent creator. And again, I want to talk more positive about about the project.
Right. Absolutely. And I
Um,
think that's the positivity about it, though, is that you're showing people what the upfront is. I don't have to worry about back end costs. I don't have to worry about hidden costs. I don't have to worry about all those things that potentially could come up and you're like, oh no, what do I do? I think for a independent creator like yourself who's figuring that stuff out before it happens speaks volumes on your preparation for what could happen. And
well,
that's where I think the change between thinking of it in a bad way and putting it into a positive aspect makes sense.
that's fair. I mean, again, the game's designed to give you years of play, so the tokens, the cards, they all gonna be of quality that you can have that years of play. I mean, I've sleeved every single card for the game. I always recommend sleeving the cards. But in general, it's all quality material. Like it's not cheap stuff. Like so when Ninja Division was having their problems with the money with Super Dungeon, they released a set called the Devil's Island, where they reached out and they said, "Look, if you guys want this cheaper, we're down for doing it. But the boards are going to be this quality versus the gray board, and the tokens are going to be this quality versus the gray board." And everyone said, "No, just make it cheaper. Just make it cheaper." I will tell you personally, the Devil's Island tiles rarely, if ever, get used on my table because they're so thin that they glide across the table. Like if you gently touch one, they don't match the quality of the other one. So like when you put it next to another one, it just feels weird or it slides under the other tile. I mean, the artwork's phenomenal, but the thickness is just it's heartbreaking compared to what you're used to for the game. And I wanted to do that for the community is like, this was the quality we started with. I'm going to deliver that same quality. I don't want to dip out just to save $10 a pledge, because I feel like that $10 is worth it, because it gives you. I have my 1.0 tiles, my Forgotten King tiles from when they first came out, from like a decade ago, and they're still in great condition. They're not worn out. They're not all dinged up. They obviously they've seen use, but they're in amazing condition because they're that thick 2mm gray board. They're not this chintzy little stuff. So that's what I want to. That's what I want to preserve and give to the community. I mean, the boxes are good quality to store everything in. The dice are good. Something actually that I haven't really spoken about publicly that I would really like to talk about publicly while we're here.
Sure.
Is when I was originally looking to do the game, they charged me X amount tooling fees for the miniatures, and I said, okay, whatever. I think it was like $5,000 total for tooling fees. So that's before we even make a single mini. It's $5,000 just to set up the molds to do the injection PVC plastic. So I said, hey man, that's cool. We'll do whatever we do. And then when we went to relaunch for the GameFound, they upped it to $32,000. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you it went from $5,000 or $7,000. I forget what it was. I think it was $5,000 to $32,000 just to tool the miniatures. That's not to print anything. That's not to produce them. That's before making a single item become a physically existing product. $32,000.
Because you brought it into production rather than just for your passion project.
Right. So now, they wanted to charge me that, and people are saying, why is your goal set so high? Like, this should be like a $20,000 goal. Like, I don't understand. If I did $20,000 goal, I'm 12 grand in the hole just on miniature tooling before I even make anything. Like, I don't think people understand that, like, post-COVID, like, manufacturing costs and materials really have gone up. But one thing I did add, because I am passionate about it, and it's a lot of manpower on my part, is I'm a very good 3D printer. Like, I'm very good at using resin printers. I know how to set them. I know how to maintain them. I know how to make a quality print, clean them, and solidify them really well. So I said, you know what? Don't worry about it. So I figured out how much it would cost to buy. I think I had to double check my notes. I think it's 4 or 5 more of the printer I use. I use a Saturn 4, where I can print 20 of a single hero in a single run. So now if I have 5, I can pop out 100 in a single printing. So I looked at the cost of that, the cost of my own resin, the cost of my own isopropyl alcohol, cost of the additional curing stations, cost of the additional materials. And after I factor everything, because that's another thing, they wanted to charge me the $7,000 to tool the bases for the minis. So I was looking at $39,000 in just miniature tooling costs, that I wind up saving myself $35,000 by doing the printing myself. So had I not done that, it would have been a goal of like $95,000, $100,000 to even see this thing see the light of day. By doing it myself, I've brought the goal down to $75,000. And again, that's something that I've tried to explain to people and like skeptics of like the numbers. And it's like, I'm not hiding my numbers. Like, I'm not going to show you my cost chart, because that's personal information, and business, whatever. Anyway, that's a whole other legal thing. But I'm very transparent about, like, it was going to cost me $39,000 just to make these minis before we printed them. And then I don't remember the exact cost per mini after that, but for a full set of minis, it was like another $20, $25 per set. And minimum orders are typically 1,000 with these companies. So you're looking at another $20,000 in just miniature cost. So that would mean, after tooling and everything else, I'm looking at $60,000 in just miniatures, let alone hardcover book, boxes, cards, gray board tokens, gray board tiles. Like, and one thing that I think is hilarious is, I'm going to blow up the industry right now with this little secret, is when a company tries to sell you on standees, the cost between cardboard and acrylic is so negligible that I didn't even consider cardboard. You're getting full acrylic standees with the game when you get the standees. So like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what else to do to explain to people how much these things actually cost. And again, if I was a large established company, I could take the initial hit, build up the publishing on GameFound, and hope that it hits big, and then just sell the stock at conventions and stuff. But again, I'm an independent creator with a limited OGL, and listen, I'll get some extra stock if it funds, of course, that I can bring to conventions and stuff, or I want to do late pledges for people who missed out. But it's bonkers. It's absolutely bonkers how much things actually cost when you don't have that ability to be like, I just throw it in the warehouse, Bob. But again, it adds years of life. It adds endgame raids, which. So when you say it adds years of life, what does that mean? One of the common questions I get asked is like, what's up with the endgame raids? Like, how do they work? So I figure when I say years of gameplay, I'm assuming you meet once a week for a game night. And we're going to assume in this instance that every time you meet, it's specifically to play Super Dungeon / the Plague Throne / WOSDEC, whatever, right? So we're meeting every Thursday. The Elemental Temple of Joragumo has 3 wings and then a final raid boss fight that's the equivalent of a session. That's 1 month of gameplay. To do that in one shot on your first try. They are challenging, so you might want to, you might make it through the first wing, and then you go, I'm going to restart this raid with a different party. Like, I don't like the composition. So this is all assuming that you're playing and you're nailing it on the first run through every time. So that's a month gone. The Mistborn Ziggurat has 4 wings and a big boss battle. So that's 5 weeks gone. And now you have 2 months in just endgame raiding. Now we go to the Plague Throne raid, which has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wings, the dragon battle where you fight this handsome fellow, which is a really, really wild and fun fight. And then it has the final penultimate battle of the entire namesake of the game, the Plague Throne, where you fight Celeste on Mr. Buttons. And that's its own encounter that'll take you an hour or two. I mean, it's a moving hour or two. It's a lot of fun because I've play tested it with the group and like everyone has a blast with it. But the way it's designed is like you're running a dungeon where you fight her on Mr. Buttons. Then once you defeat her in that form, she hops off of Mr. Buttons and replaces with like her alone miniature, and she starts summoning the undead. And that triggers other things that you have to react to. And there's like puzzles to it. It's more than just, okay, it's the enemy, let's roll dice and try and kill her. Like there's a lot to it. Same with the Spider Sister battle. Oh, hold on. Before I distract myself. So you're looking at another 5 to 6 to 7 weeks to do that. Because you probably could do the Dragon and Celeste in one night if you wanted to. So let's just say that's another 6 weeks. So now you're at 3, almost 4 months of gameplay and just end game raids.
Right.
What do you have before that? Raids are 9 to 10 heroes. So depending how your group plays, you need to level 9 to 10 heroes total between you and the other people of your group to level 10. So you're running other dungeons. There's already 15 to 20 narrative dungeons. So that's, 5 months of content right there. And that's assuming that, again, you're doing this all in one shot. You're meeting every single week. Like, in just the raw material alone, before you even worry about crafting or dungeoning to collect things to craft for materials or farming, you're looking at a solid year of gameplay. Right. After everything's said and done.
And that's if, that's the uncommon of playing once a week. Most people don't play once a week. Most people don't have that time.
Right.
So you automatically can split that in half. So if you take every other week, now you have 2 years worth of content and that's if you're not overplaying anything. Like you're not readjusting anything or changing anything.
Right.
So,
yeah, and then beyond the narrative dungeons and the endgame raids and the special festivals and events that have mini games in them, like there'll be sessions where you do mini games. Like the Great Winter Holiday Festival is what I call it because I don't do Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or whatever. I just make it a generic. It's December. Let's celebrate something. There's like a snowball fight mini game that you might wind up loving and playing for an entire session
Right.
because it gives you like little like specific holiday rewards that you get,
Yeah.
and they take place in real time too. So like it'll trigger. It'll say this event happens starting December 1st and ends January 2nd,
Oh wow.
and during that time you can access this part of the book. So there's constant things going on. There's festivals, there's fairs that you can do. There's a whole set of world events that happen when you do certain things in the story. That now, okay, cool. We did 3 of the narrative dungeons. Now the Temporal Caverns opens. Oh man, that's got another 3 or 4 narrative dungeons in it that aren't part of the main story that show you the history of Celeste and how she came into power. Whoa, like so now you're adding even more game time onto it. And not to overwhelm people, like you can pick and choose what you want. Like you don't have to do any of that if you don't want to. But there's a lot of content in here. And one of the other things I compare it to is it's and I understand it's not a real fair comparison because it's 2 different things in essence, but people will spend hundreds of dollars on a Warhammer army, right? Hundreds of dollars. And that's before you get the books. That's before you get the data cards. That's before you get the main rule book. That's before you paint anything. That's hundreds of dollars just to get the minis that you have to build and assemble, clip together, build your list. And all while you're doing that, Games Workshop is shaking up your list on you and saying, "Here, remember how those Marines that you bought 6 months ago were great? Yeah, in this FAQ they stink now. You need to get these Marines to be competitive." Like
Yep.
that's a multi-$1,000 hobby to stay relevant. I mean, you can do it for cheaper, obviously, and if you're playing in just your basement, you can do proxies with 3D printed stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm talking about if you're in the tournament scene and you want everything to be legit, you're constantly dropping hundreds of dollars a release on that,
If not thousands of dollars.
if not thousands. I know a guy who's ultra competitive, fantastic dude, has no kids, is an air traffic controller, makes oodles of money. He will buy $2,000 worth of minis and send it off to a pro painter to get pro painted.
Yeah.
And he'll pay like $4,000 for the paint job. He has a $10,000 army after everything's said and done between the special bases, the additional icons he buys,
Yep.
the minis. And like, don't get me wrong, it looks amazing. Like
Right.
every army he has is like, holy cow. Like this should be a Golden Daemon kind of quality.
Well, yeah, but at the same time,
He dropped $10,000 on
he's
an army.
paying for that quality, right?
Yeah. And I don't begrudge him. I mean, he makes great money and he's a solid dude. So it's not like, he's a POS who isn't like taking care of his wife or letting his house go default.
Right.
I'm a little jealous of it, to be honest. But and again, for $200, you're getting years of content that aren't gonna. I don't want to say aren't going to change or isn't going to change, but after this comes out and you spend your $200, you have your years of content.
Yeah. Doesn't have to change is I guess the best choice
I might
of words.
the way it would change is I might add just some free to download content. Hey man, here's the new set of narrative dungeons because it's, I don't know, Diablo 5 is coming out and I really love Diablo. So here's a Diablo 5 mission scenario.
Right.
Have fun. Like,
Yeah.
because that's what I was doing on the forums back when the forums were open. Is I'm like, hey guys, this is happening. Here's a narrative dungeon. Have fun. And like people go do the world quests.
Right.
And that's the other thing about the game
Oh boy,
is,
it's St. Patty's Day. Let's have a dungeon.
dude, a pot of gold mini game, something like that.
Yeah.
I like legit, absolutely could do that. The other thing is, the way the game is designed is it's also meant to be a community experience or solo experience. So it has that gamut where you could play it by yourself and have a ton of fun.
Mm-hmm.
You can play it with your gaming group consistently, or if you play by yourself or you play with your gaming group, and let's just say this thing funds and it takes off and everyone's happy with it, I plan on doing where I'll go to cons or people who love the game can run at cons, where you can bring your guild charter and your 10 minis from your guild charter
Right.
and go to these events and play a narrative dungeon with complete strangers and you're all on the same page. Like that's how the game is designed. Like it's not just investing in a game for yourself. You can literally play this across the world.
Right.
And that's how it's designed. To go as small as by myself in my basement to, I know this is a wild example, but like let's say I went to Japan and I brought my minions with me to a con in Japan, and they're like,
Right.
"Oh my god, we would love for you to play at our table. We're gonna do the wing of this raid." Okay, cool. I have these 10 characters. Which one do you want me to bring with me? They have
Right.
this crafted. They have this item built. Like, what should I bring? And you could just, James and Drew have never met before. We meet in Japan at this convention with a bunch of fans overseas, and now we're all playing the game together like we were always playing together at a game table. Yeah, Camera just kind of nailed that on the head. Jeez. The problem seems to be with non-US community members with limited funds and no worries. You can only do what you can do. It's
Absolutely. You can only do what you can do. But I will
and
tell
listen,
you, in the world of miniatures, in the world of board games, I just was playing around some numbers while I was popping in and out of GameFound while we were talking. Like, you know, Tainted Grail gives you 8 minis, and it was $99. Um, you know, I I have the luxury of having a decent job, and you know, comparative to dropping, almost $4,500 for Dwarven Forge, $200 doesn't really look like much. So,
I mean, and that's the thing, man. Like, I mean, I don't want to beat this horse to death about the price point
yeah,
because it is what it is, and I can't do anything about it beyond what I'm already doing.
absolutely.
Um,
What I want to talk about real quick,
ooh,
because we're running out of time, and
sure.
something that I really have wanted to hit since the beginning is the Plague Throne story. Tabletop Misfits is not normally a board game or a game founder or a project oriented show. It's about telling a story. So, where does the Plague Throne come from?
Okay, so um, I needed a big bad to build this whole leveling hero kind of concept for my
Okay,
player group. So what wound up happening was, well, first let me just state, per the OGL, I can't alter the lore of
super dope.
the game, the IP. Like I can't change the original IP, but I'm allowed to tell my story within that world.
Okay,
So like what I'm doing is considered canon, but not. Like it's canon for what it is, and like they accept that it happened in the world, but it's not going to be like in any of their books.
right.
But
Even
so
though
what
they're
happens is,
they're floundering right now, so we don't even know if they have books at this point.
um, so the story starts with Celeste as a little girl in her town. Well, she's in the place of Glower Doom Moor, which is like their undead kind of Halloweeny vibe place.
Okay,
And it's overrun by the undead. The vampire lord there, which is one of the minis that they have called Von Drak. His undead minions are coming. His necromancers are just blowing up buildings. Like they're trying to like just get rid of the chibi people that live there.
okay,
And what happens is she runs with her stuffed bear, Mr. Buttons, um, and hides and gets saved by a group of paladins. Sir Sigmund pretty much almost dies defending her against all the skeletons and undead, and she uses something that's actually in the game called the Princess Coin
okay.
that lets you resurrect, and she uses that on him to heal him and stuff. And she doesn't know where her parents are. I never really state what happens to them, but they're gone. And he adopts her as like his daughter. And the story intro ends with her basically armored up on a horse with Mr. Button strapped to her side in his own set of plate armor,
Mm,
and they charge back to take back the town that was taken when she was a child. From there, it goes on a full detailed story of that you actually get to play through in the game,
mm-hmm.
doing the narrative dungeons and doing the temporal caverns. Where actually, I should say, doing the temporal caverns, you find out this story. She goes on a mission to the elemental temple of Jorogumo, which is the first raid, and there she finds the axe of the plague lord or whatever. I forget exactly what I called him. I think it's called the plague axe, and the armor's there too, and she takes it, because they're fighting like a losing war.
Mm-hmm.
and she's using it to like slay all these people, and she got tricked into taking it, and she realizes the power that she took, and it immediately corrupts her. Immediately, like she's just filled with the voice of this dude, whatever. She starts attacking Crystallia now with armies of the undead. Sir Sigmund and her wind up getting to this penultimate battle where he ultimately has to slay his daughter at this point. And it kills him to do it. Like he just like it's like Anakin and Obi-Wan where he's like, "You were the best of us," like screaming like at each other, like when he knows he can beat her and everything. It's like a big
Right.
emotional
Yeah.
moment. And eventually he defeats her.
Mm.
They dump her body in the frozen waters of the Frostbite Reach, which is another location in Crystallia. And where this game kicks off is about 100, 200 years later, where the actual epilogue of the opening lore is there's a frozen shore with snow all over it, and a plated boot hits the ground, a green plated boot, and a tattered cloak and an axe dragging behind, held by a hand. And she winds up walking out of the water, soaked.
Right.
Eyes are now glowing green. Her skin is like sickly palish green. And she takes Mr. Buttons from her side, whispers something in his ear, and just throws him out. And he transforms into this massive, like, plague bear in
Oh,
plate armor.
wicked. Yeah.
And she winds up climbing on top of him, which is this mini right here,
Right. Wicked.
and just starts walking off into the blizzard that's approaching. And the way the game starts with the narrative dungeons is there's whispers of her returning. There's whispers of evil happening. So when you play through the narrative dungeons, you wind up seeing her come back to eventually you actually see her story-wise in the end of one of the dungeons and like what she's attempting to do. And like she's attempting to unite the daughters of Joragumo, because Joragumo is one of her lead generals. That's the element of Temple Raid. She's trying to corrupt the spirit of the Mistborn, which is the Mistborn Ziggurat raid, which is like a tribal troll people.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually you can fight her in the Plague Throne. And the whole thing is like the Plague Throne is like her dais of power, where she's unlocked all the powers of the Lord of Plagues, but has ultimately gotten rid of him. She is now the Lady of Plagues. She is that evil.
Mm.
So it's not just like, oh, I'm still been. No, she's like, listen, you can't bend me to your will. And he's like, yes, I can. And she's like, and you don't exist anymore. So she's like super badass evil. And at the end of the raid of the Plague Throne, because the raids tell the story too, besides just the narrative dungeons, you basically get to defeat her and choose whether you want to redeem her or not. And then beyond that, and I don't care about spoiling it anymore, there is a picture at the very end of the book um, of a steamwork construct that's quite large, sitting on this throne made of cogs and gears and stuff. It's dark, it's shadowy. He's holding an illuminated orb. He has a massive two-handed hammer next to him. He's like resting on the throne like this big construct, and above it, in like a steampunk cog kind of title, it says WOSDEC 2.0. So I have more story, 4 more thrones, more raids, more content to deliver if this funds. So we'll see what happens, but the story goes on and it gets pretty in depth as you're running through the dungeons. And the one thing that I did, because I love the game so much, is every single narrative dungeon pays homage to the game. Like it calls on characters that exist in the game. It calls on bosses that exist in the game, heroes that exist. It talks about them. You can interact with them. In some narrative dungeons, it allows you to drop one of your heroes and take one of the generic heroes mentioned in the story. Like so, and if you do that, the group gets more experience and more rewards for their guild and stuff.
Gotcha.
So like there's a lot to it.
No, it sounds it's very unique. It definitely rivals that mentality of how we are as game masters and things like that. but it also shows your dedication to not only the story but to the passion of Super Dungeon as a whole. And that to me, right? I mean, he says it right there. You're using your 28 years of dungeon mastering to write this story,
Yeah. And
and
again, it's a passion. I just love doing it.
I would hate to be that person to be like, at the end of this, have this only be in your basement. Partial. Well, let me caveat that. I would hate for that to happen, but then because I know you, I would love for that to happen because that means the only time I can ever play this game is if I come say hi. So there
Yeah.
is that.
Well,
Um,
I was supposed to have a few people come and play test it. Unfortunately, one got sick, and one guy who may or may not be in this chat right now broke his ankle and couldn't make the trip. But Logan of the Red Hair Inn came, and he
yeah,
did the Elemental Temple raid with us.
yeah.
And I'm not joking. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not lying. He'll back me up on this. When we did that Three Sister boss fight, he lost his shit. he he went on about it for the next 30 minutes after we beat it. He was just like, he's like, but it's a tabletop game. But it felt like an online MMO. Like we had to figure it out. We had to react. Like we had to do switching. There was it wasn't just rolling dice and trying to beat it. There were tactics and puzzles and you all had to do it all while it's gone. And I'm like, yeah, dude, this is way more in depth than I think people fully understand. Like the end game raids will make you feel like you're in an MMO, but not in such a grindy way, because
Right.
you're with your friends in the same room, having beer and pretzels, laughing, joking, rolling dice with these cute minis on this board, but having a serious battle.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing is that people don't realize and I think it almost throws them off. When I think of a serious battle, when I think of seriously diving into a heavy strong story, the last thing I'm thinking about is tossing a bunch of chibi miniatures up on the board.
Right.
But I also think that it gives a feel that is not natural to this genre that makes it different.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that is the double-edged sword we're dealing with or not. And I feel like that if that is legitimately the thing that is holding us back, I feel that is absolutely terrible.
Listen, it's a just to wrap this up in my at least from my end,
Yeah.
it doesn't change, or it doesn't take away from Super Dungeon. If you liked playing Super Dungeon, it only adds onto that rule set. I have a few rules that I recommend modifications to that I built the game around. Like, so for instance, with princess coins, when you run out of princess coins, you lose the dungeon. I said, no way. I said, when you run out of princess coins, you just can't resurrect heroes. So you can keep going till just the tank or just the DPS is left, trying to take down that boss. Because we've had sessions where my wife is texting me from upstairs, keep it down, the kids are sleeping, because Drew Thalian's standing there with 1 hit point left. The boss is there with 2 hit points left, and the boss is going, and everyone's screaming for me to roll really high on my armor saves to make sure I don't die. And we successfully defeat, the dungeon.
Right.
And it's down to those moments because it was just a tough dungeon run, but we have that one hero left who's just sitting there tanking and trying to hurt back and trying to defeat the boss.
I mean,
So
those
I
are the
have some
moments we live for, right? Those are the moments as a game master, those are the moments as a player you live for. You live for that moment where you have to make the decision of, do I risk it or do I stay safe?
Right.
And those are the times where if you risk it and it goes well for you, a story is told. If you risk it and it goes bad for you, a story is still told.
Right.
And that to me is what makes tabletop games and what makes board games like your game, which is very different than most board games in my opinion, so meaningful and a great way for us to end the night. WOSDEC is not a board game. WOSDEC is a tabletop game with a board connected to it. And if people see that, they see the passion that has come into it, and they see what is happening between games like Dungeons and Dragons, Cyberpunk, Vampire the Masquerade, Power Rangers. We're adding a board to it. That's all we're doing. But yet we're able to tell the same impactful, dramatic, and intense story that we're telling around the table with our friends, eating pretzels, eating almonds, smashing down whatever food you have at your table.
Yeah, I usually cook for my home group.
Oh, I can't wait for the moment I can come up for a Drew experience, as we've talked about at Mysticon.
So funny thing, my birthday is November 30th. For those that don't know, if you want to send me things, for those watching,
mine's next weekend, or mine's next Friday.
Oh, happy early birthday!
Thanks, buddy.
But November 30th, usually what I do for my birthday, because my mother-in-law has the same birthday as me, is my wife will take the kids and go see her mother, and I'll have the house to myself, and I'll have my friends over for a day of like Super Dungeon.
Yeah.
That if that's the case, you're going to be invited.
If it wasn't for the fact that I am gone from the 22nd to the 25th, and then there's no way.
That's fair. You're going to miss out on all the barbecue. Or actually, because it's November, I'll probably do the homemade sauce and meatballs and stuff.
You're just trying to just pull the strings.
Fresh made ravioli or some gavadillos. That's all I'm saying.
Oh. Maybe, if I can find a one-way flight up there that's not absolutely ridiculous, I mean, I might, see. It wouldn't be the first time I've said, the flight's not too bad. I can make this happen.
Well, you could probably drive it, to be honest.
Long Island?
Yeah, it's not bad.
No, it's not too bad.
I'll hit you with my exact address later after the stream, and you can Google it.
Yeah, that sounds good. But, yeah. Drew, I wish you the best of luck on this thing. I think, personally, it is one of the few passion projects that I have seen that have come from a single creator moving forward that should go far.
Thank you.
I don't know if it is, but I'm going to be that person that's that's holding you up and trying to push you as far as we absolutely can. For those that are watching that have not supported it yet, we are at 95 backers right now at $19,000. We have 20 days left. We have
another $55,000 to go.
$55,000 to go. I ask you, I plead with you, I beg you.
Spread the word.
If you have the opportunity, there are free ways to do this. Of course, yes, spread the word. Share this to your friends, your families, your game tables, and heck, send it to your enemies. Maybe they'll enjoy it. And maybe they won't be your enemies at that point anymore. But from the bottom of my heart, thank you once again for coming out here to the tavern and just sharing your project.
Thank you for having me, man.
Next
means
week,
a lot.
Surprisingly, we have another Kickstarter next week. Over the next couple months, we're going to have Kickstarters have been reaching out left and right to talk about what they're doing over here in the world of TTRPGs. This one specifically, though, is a passion project. Once again, it is something that it has grown. I will say, though, it's much different than what we're dealing with tonight, and they're also one of our major sponsors this year. So Rich. Noah Rich is a good, wonderful person that I've been able to talk to, and he does all of the sounds for Monument Studios. Him and one other individual down in North Carolina do all the sounds for Monument Studios.
Are you doing Monument Studios?
Next week. So
I'll be chiming in on that one.
We're excited to talk to them about how their Kickstarter went, what tips and tricks they can give to people who are working on Kickstarters and GameFounders, and also all the cool things that they have plans for. But if you have not checked out Monument Studios and you need sounds and all sort of ambience for your next game, they are definitely what we recommend. All of our tavern music, all of our music for Dress to Quest, and all of our music for our home games all come from them. So thank you.
Tell them about the Plague Throne.
Definitely gonna talk about the playthrough. Maybe we'll have. Maybe if we can get to the right stretch goal, maybe we can talk to them about creating their own customized versions of music.
WOSDEC soundtrack. I would love it.
Soundtrack. But no, Drew, do you have any last words that you can give to our friends, or any last sets of wisdom for 28 years of or of DMing?
Actually, yes, and it feels very appropriate based on things happening right now in the U.S. Is just 28 years of DMing. The only reason that that's been sustainable is because just remember, no matter what, always be yourself, always surround yourself with good people, and always be kind to others. It doesn't matter what else is going on. As long as you do that, the world, even for just your own little corner, is just a better place. So just, if things are going to beat you down, just always remember to smile and treat others with kindness, and everything else will fall into place for you.
Absolutely. For those out there that are having struggles this year with everything that's happened, we support you, we're with you, and we hope that you continue to bring a light to this world. I am, of course, your wonderful, humble game master and bartender, or innkeeper, however you want to call this. This is Tabletop Misfits and Tavern Talks. Once again, we've had a wonderful guest for our evening. Tonight, we will once again raise our glasses high as we cheer to another wonderful evening. And hopefully we'll see you guys all next week as we continue our guests coming back once again for 135. If you want to come see how zany I am on an actual Game Master, come hang out with us on Monday nights at Gen Con TV. Or tomorrow night, we have Beaker over here as he's continuing to work on his Gunpla. And then, surprisingly enough, as soon as he is done with his Gunpla, he's going to start painting. And the first mini he is working on is a WOSDEC exclusive.
What?
Anyways, we'll talk to you guys all very soon. We'll see you guys all. Raise your glasses high. This is the last call. We'll see you guys all on Tavern Talks next week. Have a wonderful night.
Bye.
As soon as I can find my mouse.